Good morning, students. In the furtherance of the previous lecture, we are going to start module 3, whereby we are going to discuss 3 rules, out of which 2 are Latin maxims and 1 is interpretation of penal and remedial statutes. Now, coming to the first topic for today's lecture is construction contemporanea exposito e forcinia in lege. This is a Latin maxim in which if we try to divide it into separate verses, we are going to understand construction, which means taking out a conclusion from a particular topic or a word. Second is contemporanea, which means contemporary. Contemporary in literal and a grammatical sense means that there is a made by a particular existing authority for which was made particularly for that particular topic or an action or an law. And expositio means exposition. Now, this maxim and this law rule was given by Lord Coke, and this means that contemporary exposition of any rule or any law is the best interpretation which one court or a person can do. Now, it is also, as I have written, best interpretation of any law or a statute given by its contemporary authority, which was particularly made by it, because contemporary authority, because the person or any particular authority who's made it if we try and dig into the details of that particular law, we are going to try and understand the intent, the progression, the intent and the reason behind why such law was made in that particular area of time. Contemporary authority might also be certain people who might have lived at that time and who might have gone through the making of the law, have been through all the process and the procedure at a time where the law was made. Now, this maxim was confirmed in Supreme Court's case Deshbandhu versus Delhi Stock Exchange Limited, AIR 1979. This is a very important fact about this Latin maxim. Now, coming to the applications of this particular maxim. Now, this maxim is only applicable to the ancient rules, ancient statutes and the statutes which have been pre-existing. Now, this is also one of the limitations of this rule, because this rule cannot be applied to any modern rules or contemporarily modern authorities who have made certain rules which are existing right now in our times. Now, coming to the limitations of this particular maxim are, it is only applicable when an ambiguity is found in a particular law or a particular phrase or particular word. But then this is also an limitation to all the interpretations and all these rules which we have studied so far, because until and unless there is nothing contrary, or there is nothing ambiguous, or there is no challenge set in front of the courts or the bench, there is no need of interpretation as to whatsoever. Now, coming to the second limitation is that in this particular rule, customs, we've already read customs and jurisprudence that they are the best sources of law. And secondly, customs, in this particular law, customs are given priority over the actions of the accused or the parties, which somehow in some cases might not seem good, but as this rule applies, this is the case over, like for example, we can take example of a very known custom which was followed and has come to non-existence in the couple of past years and a decade only, which is sati. Now, sati is a custom which was followed for a very long time for the previous years and decades, probably during the times of our parents or their parents, probably that meaning our grandparents. But now customs are given priority because that particular act or that particular action was not meant, it was considered illegal. It was considered monstrous. So over here also, if the acts or the customs are availing or prevailing over the actions of the accused or any other person, customs will always will. But this is a limitation. So you cannot always prevail customs over the actions of the accused, because customs might change and there might be acceptance and non-acceptance of the customs as well, depending upon the society and the mindset of the society in which we are right now living in. Now, coming to the third is that it is also, as I've told you before, it is only applicable to ancient statutes. I mean, it cannot be used on the statutes which are contemporarily modern and have been authorized and have been brought out by the contemporarily modern society and the authority. Now, the fourth one is cannot be used to substantially repeal. Now, this is also a very different approach towards, and a limitation which has been pointed out by several authors, is that this rule cannot be used to repeal or quasi-repeal any provision or an act. Now, what do you mean by repeal? Repeal is removing it to the crux, which we cannot use this rule to do it. Now, second is quasi-repeal. Quasi-repeal is you cannot even amend a slight part. Like, for example, you have a provision, you cannot remove part A and keep the part B. You are not allowed to do this under this particular rule. So this completes our construction of contemporary exposition, construction under contemporary exposition. Now, coming to the second topic for today is beneficial construction. Now, as we've read before, that we've already discussed what construction is, how is it different from interpretation, and how are we supposed to do construction, and how exactly are they two different. They are two variants of the same thing, used synonymously, but they mean different when used at different times and at different places. Now, beneficial construction, if I'm not going to tell you the real meaning, this is very well understood that beneficial construction means anything which you conclude to benefit somebody. Anything which is for the better good of the person standing in right in front of you, or any decision which you're going to take should be in the benefit for a person or people as a society. Now, what beneficial construction exactly means is, it means giving the widest meaning possible to a statute. I mean, for this construction and for this beneficial construction rule, a bench or the courts have to consider the worst case scenarios while repealing, while constructing or while interpreting this rule. Now, in this case, Santram versus Rajiv, there was this case, Santram versus Rajiv. Under this, it was held, I should read it. Now, under this case, Santram versus Rajiv, there welfare legislation and labor legislation was discussed, whereby the courts had decided that any rule or regulations or provisions which have to be made should be made in the public interest, should be made for the economic and socio-economic benefits for the society and in the public interest. You should not be categorizing people on the basis of how they live, what is their caste, or what work are they doing. Under this case, if you are doing any work or any kind of labor, you should be benefited out of any law which was made. Now, applications of this particular rule are, by application of this rule, re-legislation of a provision might happen. Any court, when applying this particular rule, that is beneficial construction, might legislate or re-legislate a rule which has been already in existence for a very long time, under different circumstances, with a minimal amount of variance, or totally changing what the existing laws were. Now, the second one is where any word of a statute confers single meaning. The courts shall try and refrain from usage of this particular rule. Now, because any particular word, when it is already implied or it directly infers you while reading the particular statute, the court shall try and refrain it, because that rule has been accepted by the society and has been prevailing for a very long time. Now, if they try to change it, it might change different variants, it might cause troubles for other people who have been living under the state of that law. Now, the third one is, if there is no ambiguity, or there are plain provisions, you are not finding any head-on clashes between two provisions of a particular statute, this rule is not going to apply, because this rule is only going to apply where there is requirement of a wide area or a broader area of spectrum to be interpreted, where the courts or the lawyers or any person who is dealing with interpretation is supposed to think of the worst case scenarios and the futuristic scenarios, which is a very important part for this construction. Now this particular rule is mostly applied on socio-economic legislatures, which meaning are for the benefits of the society, which meaning are for the greater good and are under the public interest. Now, the third topic for your module 3 is interpretation of penal statutes and remedial statutes. First and the foremost thing, what are penal and remedial statutes? Penal statutes are particular statutes which provide you certain penalties on imposition of certain penalties on a particular action, and it also segregates what exactly a crime constitutes of, how you are supposed to constitute a crime, what exactly are the stages of in which a crime might occur, and what exactly is the punishment, penalties for it. Now, penal statutes are also, it is also said by Maxwell, as I would like to quote, Maxwell has said that the gravity of as stated by Maxwell, it is said that the amount and the intensity of a person's punishment is determined by the gravity of the action or the law which it falls under. Now, remedial statutes are statutes which provide you certain amount of remedies and have come into existence only to provide remedial things or remedial provisions for particular actions and acts done by a person. Now, under this there is a legal maxim, which Latin maxim, which means a verbis legis non et rescindum. Now this maxim in particular means don't vary the meaning of words whilst interpreting it. Now in literal sense, talking in layman language, this particular maxim is trying to tell you that you should not try and vary the meanings of two words or a particular word when you are trying to interpret it. If you do so, it might change, and it might change the judgment or any or even the actions how you are perceiving towards that law. Now, there was this system of basically penal and remedial statutes fall under a category which are known as canons of interpretation. Now, what does canon mean? Canon basically means sets of rules which were evolved by the judiciary to help the judges and give them a set format and give them a cumulative act whereby they can decide as to what punishment a person should be given depending upon his actions and the intensity of the actions which he is committed. Now, talking about penal statutes, there are 5 points which one should remember while interpreting a penal statute. First, there is always strict interpretation. There was actually strict interpretation when we talk about penal statutes, because it was decided because penal statutes cover mostly those acts which are considered as inhuman and which no normal prudence man would like to do, because they might end up getting a lot of punishment under these acts. Now, second is, if there is any act, if there is anything which makes you difficult, and talking about one more is that suo motu, you cannot decide upon what and how exactly are you interpreting any statutes. Now, second is, under penal statutes, retrospective effect cannot be given until it is under the interest of the accused. I'm talking about only while we are interpreting penal statutes. Mind it, no retrospective effect. Retrospective effect मतलब अगर 2 साल पहले कोई केस हुआ है और आज अगर हम उसकी कोई काम कर रहे हैं या anything regarding that, it particular law which is happening right now might not, or which has happened before, we are not going to apply the same rule on a case 2 years before, until and unless it is for the benefit of the accused person. Now coming second is suo motu alterations cannot be made. A court or a lawyer or a judge cannot make suo motu, मतलब अपने तरफ से कोई भी alteration उस law में नहीं कर सकते हैं until and unless it is requirement of the hour, until and unless that requirement or that law that particular alteration in that law is the very need which might make a better use and which might make a better law in the near future. Now the third one is adoptions of word in natural sense. Any word or anything which is used under a penal law or a judgment falling under the case of a penal law shall be taken in its original and its ordinary sense. You are not supposed to alter it. You are not supposed to interpret it in different situations and circumstances. You have to take it as the face of it and how it is being used. And one should try and find the intention and the intentive nature as to why the particular word or a law was made, and then try and come to a further conclusion which might end up being a good thing. Now, mens rea. We've all studied penal IPC and everything, but we've also studied that mens rea is a main essential for committing a crime and all sorts of that literature and everything. But then under penal statutes, while we are interpreting, we are also considering that mens rea is not always important. When you are interpreting a law, mens rea is something which is not supposed to be considered as a crucial part. For example, if any person is accused under Arms Act or Food Adulteration Act, no person or no judge is bound to consider, even the judge, even the lawyer who is fighting the case is not supposed to take under the consideration that whether the person who's accused or whether the person who's at fault has a mens rea or was considering or speculating about committing that particular crime. Now this was the topic for today, module 3. And tomorrow we are going to study further. We are also going to study interpretation of remedial statutes in detail tomorrow, and along with fiscal statutes with our taxing statutes. Thank you so much, and we'll continue tomorrow. अब आप आई क्यों नहीं? मैं आपको बुला रही थी.